Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of Transformation. I'm your host, Mark Sheff, and today I talk with my good friend, Rebecca Guay. Rebecca has gone through so many different kinds of transformation in her creative career. She's also a good friend to me and a mentor and has been my teacher and has been someone who I've looked to for years on how to navigate change. And today I get to talk with her and share those changes, those ideas with you. At any rate, it's a great conversation and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of Transformation. I'm your host, Mark Sheff, and I'm joined this week by a very special guest, a very special friend, someone who has been a teacher to me, a mentor to me, a friend to me, a lifeline to me, so many things over the years. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Well, I think back, my work as a coach, we all need that support from people at various times in their lives. And I just remember how many times have I, texted you or called you and said, I don't think I can do this anymore. And you're like, all right, let me get you back on track. And that's so meaningful to have people
Yes.
to have people like that in your life. But before we get into all that, can you, just give our viewers, our listeners, just a little sense of kind of who you are in the world?
So I'm a professional artist, and I began my career, as some people might know if they know my work, in as a comics artist and then a science fiction fantasy artist. I spent a lot of years within that genre. And in 2011, after completing two large graphic novels that were creator-owned projects, which were wonderful projects, there was other things that I wanted to say with my work, and I ended up shifting my focus to personal work, personally driven stories, developing the power of narrative within a gallery context. So I've been largely, if not exclusively, working in the gallery world, doing shows and my own books, my own projects that usually revolve around a show since my first solo show. Even though I stopped in 2011 doing publishing primarily, I did my first solo show in 2013, and that's what I continue to do to this day.
Yeah. Something that's always impressed me also about you is I've been friends with you through some of these, these changes and these evolutions. When you sort of set your mind to something, you get very focused.
Yes.
You do your research, you figure out what the landscape looks like. But it's not always easy either. I mean, I assume, and I'd love to know from your perspective, when you're going through a big shift like that from, a very, very good career in fantasy, sci-fi, comics, to saying, I really want to do something completely different. What at the time, if you can kind of go back to that 2011, time, what were some of the fears that you had as an already successful artist in making a big change like that?
The thing that happens with change is that it happens quick and slow. So for a number of years, I had been thinking I wanted to do personally driven work, but I didn't know what that meant for me. I had been working on publishing projects and putting a lot of energy into getting my own publishing projects published with mainstream publishers, which took a lot of energy. But then in the middle of working on that on the side, I was also starting to develop what my non-publishing related work would look like, and doing a number of pieces that were purely for myself to see what that looked like. And that started happening around 2005 or 6. And so by the time I hit the point of finishing those two large projects, I had a number of works that I knew where the direction would go. And I'd slowly been bringing those forward in smaller venues and other places to see if there was actually a physical and practical place for those pieces to sell. So you're working towards something in small bites, consistently, completing piece after piece after piece, well ahead of making any major shifts. So it's like things dovetail in. You're moving along in the track, you're starting another track, they overlap for a while, then the other one starts picking up and moving, and then you're ready to go, okay, I'm ready to jump onto this island or this ship and let that ship carry me for a while. You almost never are traveling along on a train and then hit another train and jump
Yeah.
immediately into something cold. You're starting to put the pieces in place to make a shift. And so again, by the time I felt like I could jump to a solo show, I I had the two graphic novels behind me, and I had the money in the bank from them, from the
Mm.
advances that came
Yeah,
from
really
that,
important.
which is yeah, and it wasn't like a ton of money, but it was enough, and it was enough, and I had also enough sales from collectors who had followed the new work for me to say, I'm selling the new work for a lot more because it's larger pieces, and that's me, and the fact that it's selling is meaningful, and that was a safe place to to start the shift. So, um, and then I could move on to do the body of work for the show. Every show you do is a leap of faith. I don't, most artists don't sell out a show. That's a fiction. Mostly what happens is you have a strong enough show so that it provides a nice cushion to move on to your next thing. So that's how it goes. You have a strong show, a decent show, and that's a success. That's a tremendous success.
Yeah. It's a
So
nice kind of long view in a way of because it can be very disappointing, as I am very familiar with, to have a show that doesn't, sell as well as you wanted, or
yeah,
a release that doesn't sell as well as you wanted. But
yeah,
in the context of this larger kind of overlapping train tracks, as you put it,
right.
these things can be okay. Um,
There's
and
always
something else
many trains too.
yeah,
An artist in a creative life has many trains that they are operating. Many engines are running always.
yeah,
Very few artists, just have one stream of income to make things happen or possibilities to get things out there.
yeah.
You kind of have to be okay with moving around a bit between things.
If your artistic life could look different, I mean, would you
Hmm.
would you want to have a life where it's really kind of just one train?
Just one track. I think we're always working toward a simplification. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, it would be, it would be nice. But at the same time, what happens if that one thing went away? Like, I just, I think it's kind of a fiction. I mean, it would be lovely to just paint and have every single show I do sell out to the degree that it just generates 2 years worth of income, and I could guarantee that would happen every single show I did.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also, I've been doing this long enough to understand that I'm a realist about that. And I have other things that I like, years where I wasn't showing during COVID. I put together a book project and sold the book, and had that funded through fans who wanted the work. And so, you know, it's hard to even. It's almost like maybe it would be nice to have just one thing, but
Hmm.
I am not sure that it's like so unlikely that I, even in the best scenario, like even in the very best scenario, I'm sure there are like mega stars like who have just monster shows every couple of years. But I, then what happens when something doesn't sell or your gallery drops you? And I don't want to name names, but I know a couple of people who
Yeah.
were what everybody expects from the outside. They look like megastars. They look from the outside like art world superstars. Their gallery closes. Major gallery closes, one that's been there for 40 years. And all of a sudden they can't find representation again.
Hmm.
And this happens, and it happens to huge names. And so as an entrepreneur artist, I mean, I don't think I'd ever give up the ability to understand how to pivot,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
think you really hit on something there is that creatives and not just creatives, but if you are creating anything, it could be creating a
Mm.
an art career or whatever small business you're creating or bigger business, you're creating something. And all of those people are entrepreneurs on some level.
Yeah.
When I worked for you and taught at Smart School,
Mhm.
it's one of the conversations we always had at the very beginning of the semester with, I taught the beginner classes for those who don't know. And, we'd have people come in and you'd say, oh, well, what do why are you here? What do you want to get out of the class? And they say, oh, I just want to make art. I want to make art, and I want to, provide for myself with my art. And on one hand, you're absolutely right. Like, there's a handful of people who legitimately, live that life and do that and are secure enough that they don't necessarily worry about the gallery closing. They've got enough different clients, and that's where their diversification maybe comes from. The other side of that is you're an entrepreneur. There's a whole lot
Yeah.
to, running a business, even if it's your own art business. It's that whole running the business
Yeah.
side that also,
Yeah.
has to happen. And that's
Yes.
not something that everybody wants to do. Now, maybe you have the
No.
resources to hire a team and to do those things for you. But unless you're really interested in that, it's going to be a lot more of a
Yes.
grind, right?
Yeah. Anybody in a creative industry who is, they largely have to be just really good business people. It's one of the things that, it's the hidden part of why a small percentage of artists actually are able to make it. It's not that their art's not good,
Right.
or, and it's not like that they can't produce art. It's that you need a sort of a very challenging skill set that a lot of people have a hard time kind of seeking and find. I think everybody has the ability to find it because everybody's path on how to find what works for them is different.
Yeah.
Um, but if you know you have a certain way in which you can get things done and you follow how you do it, then you can usually kind of connect it to other parts of your career as an artist and make things go. But it's not linear, and it doesn't have defined borders. Uh, being in a creative profession, um, and so you're always sort of in a state of asking what needs to be done next, given the
Hmm.
current climate, what needs to be shifted, what needs to be changed, and and then that's separate and aside from the actual work that you're making as an artist, which is,
Yeah.
yeah, this is what's
Yeah.
hard about being an artist.
Well, that's part, that's it, is that when you're doing this kind of work, when you're creating, something kind of out of nothing, it is hard. And,
Yeah.
the thing that I've heard and you've heard over and over and over again is how lonely that can be and how isolating
Yeah,
it
it's
can
very, yeah,
feel.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I'm curious for you to sort of I'd love to know kind of in your background something that I think a lot about, as you know, is community and how important
Hmm.
healthy, thriving communities are for
Yeah, yeah,
especially for creatives who are largely working in isolation these
right.
days, more and more.
Hmm.
How, like in your life, where has that shown up for? I know some of the stories, but I'm curious from you, like where have you had community that you've relied on for various things that have helped you in your career?
it, there's a couple different pieces to the answer.
Mm,
So largely, I think a lot of us as artists are, and me particularly, I'm an introvert that puts on an extrovert outfit, and exists that way in hyper
right.
focused periods of time. And I've made friendships over the years that are long and meaningful friendships, but they're not always friends that I see daily at all. They're people that I see 2 or 3 times a year, even some of my closest friends, because my daily life is actually super quiet. It's very, very quiet. It's me working and working on the projects, working on the art. Um, But those yearly, a few times a year touch points with certain pieces of a community go a really long way. So if you're worried that you don't have a daily community and you're a failure in some way because you don't have some
Mm.
big idea of a community, I think it's important to dismiss that idea, because community might mean that you really meet up with a few friends twice a year, and you connect with those particular artists, or you touch base now and then with a couple other friends every few months on art, or but you really only need one or two people in your life that really you respect, and I've got that. I've got my husband, who's an artist, who I respect tremendously.
Yes.
If you have that person to bounce your ideas off of, who you really respect, that's, even, or one other close friend, that's like the sort of heart of things, I think, for me anyway. I think it's hard sometimes, again, like going back to that piece about when we talk about community, and we see this idea of what community is online or what other people talk about, we really can be hard on ourselves when we start, if we feel like we're not like loved enough by our community, or support, like, why don't I have the community that other person has, when in fact it's usually clusters of people a few times a year. It's not
Mm.
it's not like everybody's getting together and having really productive parties every week without you,
Oh, you're not doing that? Because
Yeah, not at all. And I think that's another important thing to remember. I mean, there might be some people who are just really charmed with that kind of existence, but it's not me.
yeah.
And it doesn't mean you need to have that in order to be successful. What you need to do is kind of connect in with the people periodically in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that just came to mind as you were talking about that is, community, and community can look like a lot of different ways.
Right.
I know, the program that you run, Smart School, I know there's a
Yeah.
great community there. I was part of it for
Yeah.
a long
Yeah.
time. And, you can dip in and you can dip out, and people are really supportive. And,
Right. And it
I know that,
happens online largely.
and
Like,
it does happen online.
and the online part is super important. I think still online communities are really, really, really important. Yeah.
Unpack that a little bit for it. What does that mean? Why is it so important?
Well, I mean, I don't think I would have nearly the career that I've had were it not for things like Instagram and Facebook.
Mm.
No way. No way at all. And I actually, enjoy the process of connecting with people. People do see my work, and I've started friendships and relationships that, again, I might not see people weekly, but really meaningful ones where I see people every 6 months and we check in, and it's like kind of amazing. And gallery relationships that have started directly out of people seeing my work online. I mean, I think it's very of the moment to diss social media, but it's an outrageously excellent tool, and
So,
for all
so
of its, yeah,
I know, and you and I have talked
yeah,
about
yeah,
anxietygram, and like how,
yeah,
how
right,
there
right.
are
The
difficult
sides
sides
of
to
it,
it,
yeah,
right? And
the
the
sides,
comparison trap, where you're like, oh, they have all these, likes and views,
right,
and I'm not
right,
getting
right,
these things.
right, right.
But
Which,
you,
yeah,
but you also seem to have a very healthy view, and I heard you say
hmm,
something there that was, I
yeah,
think, qualitatively different than I think maybe the way some people are approaching it, which is, you are there, and you are connecting with people.
yeah,
Is it?
absolutely.
And I'm just sort of curious, like, how are you doing that in a way that feels, because again, like, that can be so mentally heavy to like sort of be
Right,
on there all the time and not getting anything, whatever. How are you
right,
approaching it in a way that
right.
feels, healthy?
I think I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed the process. I know, like, some people really don't. Like, they really don't like the process of, um, as an introvert, like, it's kind of perfect for me because I just sort of chase down what I like, and I start following artists that I legitimately like, and I start following like individuals who have good ideas that I truly do like. And and try to engage in meaningful ideas even in a short way. And I think, and that does work. I get into these interesting little snippets of conversations with people. They end up following my work. I end up following theirs. And then when we run into each other at a show or something, it's very cool. And then 6 months later, we run into each other again at another show or at another event. It's also very cool. And like sometimes it takes like 5 years to sort of see some of these friendships to fruition or relationships to fruition. But so many have happened out of it. It's so many, or like in the process of even on the teaching side of what has been my life, and bringing teaching forward. That would be it's where I would connect with all the students have worked with, or am currently working with. I love to see when they post. I love to see when my students are posting. So I'm working with teaching at New York Academy of Art this fall, and I don't usually teach at live programs. In the past, I've taught with Smart School and online programs and things. But this year, it's been interesting to come back to a live setting. That being said, as much as I like working with them live, we all follow each other now on Instagram. That was the first thing I wanted them to all do, is make sure I was following them, because in the next 5 years, I want to watch what they're doing.
Yeah.
I want to see where they're going. I want to go support them when they have a show. I want to repost their events and their new successes to my stories. I want to do all of those things, especially if I really love what they're doing. And that's just another great benefit of what social media can do. And it feels really good to amplify some good work that you want to see in the world.
Well, and it resonates with me because in the work that I do as a coach, something that I'll tell people all the time is, we might have these, virtual meetings, but live, interactions. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the work, meaning the growth, whether inside or the art outside, a lot of that happens in between the sessions. Yeah. And so having those connections in between where you can kind of like boost, update, comment, whatever, is really valuable.
Yeah.
You seem, and I'm hearing you talk, and I know this to be true, I think, but you really believe in the power and the sort of the essential nature of art in our lives and in society. Is that?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I mean, we understand the world through stories, I understand the world through stories. I always have. It was the place I would go for solace and understanding of where I fit in things. It was what gave me joy to seek out when I was growing up. And now the power of world building, creating your own reality is what I do every day when I'm in the studio. And when I see other people connecting to the world I'm building, and it gives them the same sort of space and inspiration and feeling of helping them understand the world, it really is meaningful to me. It can be such we have such a limited time on this planet. We have this one precious life, and art and stories and music and culture and the things that bring forward the map of the human heart. I mean, that's the only thing that matters, going through these stressful moments that many of us are feeling about what's happened with the election, and coming to realize that the agony of the world can't live rent-free in my brain. And you can put it in a place and be an activist, but your life is this one life, and filling it full with things that elevate your heart, and giving that forward is really where my biggest aims are as an artist. And yeah.
Yeah, I've seen you do that with your obviously your work. I've seen you do it as a teacher, as a mentor, as a friend.
Hmm.
Um, the idea that you are giving people in a way like permission and access to,
Hmm.
connecting with some deeper understanding of themselves or of the
Yeah.
world. I do think that's important. I mean, someone asked me the other day, why I coach and why I do, kind of like inner work as opposed to like business coaching or
Right.
whatever else. Because I think similarly to you, like if we can, through our creative efforts and whatever that
Hmm.
looks like, in uh, have an impact on people such that they are truly, authentically, hopefully peacefully connected with the deeper meaning of their lives and the presence in their lives. I mean, imagine if everybody just, had that, like how
Yeah.
many fewer problems we would have in the world.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
know a lot of
Yeah.
artists who are like, oh, I want to do more. I want to, I want to change
Right.
things. And
Right.
I
Right.
think that we can change things just in the actions we have in our, in our everyday lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I have this conversation. I'm having this conversation right now with some students about that they come from a place of activism in their art and they want to put that forward. And that's a whole nother layer of what you might do. You can do big activism with your art. You can do quiet activism with your art. Activism doesn't always have to look like a scream. It can look like a whisper that resonates. And I have different layers of that happen in and throughout the work. Sometimes things go very directly at activism in the work. Sometimes they're quietly underneath. But I think when the work starts causing you pain and you're in a constant state of agitation and pain with the work you're doing yourself,
Mm,
that's usually the place at which I try to reel back and say, this is how much of this do I want to experience in the process of this in the studio? You know, maybe I could like it. Yeah. So, yeah.
yeah, it's hard to, and I've been through periods of intense stress. I mean, the election, notwithstanding, we all have lives and things that on
Yeah.
in our
The
lives,
stress
and
of life.
a
Yeah.
pandemic, a health scare. Like we have these
Yeah.
things that come up. I find it difficult to be, and I know a lot of people do, to be creative when when there's uncertainty that
Right.
impacts our lives in such deep ways.
Right.
Um, and I'm hearing you say like, you don't want to allow these things to live rent free in your brain.
Yeah.
Um,
And you kind of have to treat, in the midst of everything that goes on in life, you have to sort of treat your creative process like it's what gets done every day,
mm,
whether or not you want to do it. It's like um, there will never be a time in your life, right, where when you're not struggling with something, either
mhm,
your health or someone you love's health, or a larger issue, or financial stress, or a work deadline stress, or any number of things, especially if you're in this sort of free fall of an art and creative life, Um, so you just, as much as is possible, you just get up every day that is available to you and start the process of doing the work. Um, and that it just I mean, it's like you don't wait for inspiration.
mhm.
That finds you working. You don't wait for the brilliant idea because you will never be able to make a perfect painting. So it's like people are always trying to, you know, they expect so much of each piece that comes out of them. It almost pushes them into inactivity. It's like,
Yes, I've
yeah,
seen it. Yeah.
oh yes,
And
it's
and like, and
yeah,
I mean, it's also happened to me, but you said this, inspiration finds you working, and I've heard
yeah,
it said in sort of another way, which, mostly about writing, but it's like
yeah.
you don't wait for an idea and then write it down. You write to get
To
ideas,
get the ideas
right?
exactly,
And
and yeah, yeah,
I think that's such a powerful concept that, and then of course it's like, well, okay, but what if I'm really, struggling, and and it's hard for me to sort of sit down. Something that comes again from my world of
Yeah.
coaching is this idea of small steps. It's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you say, which
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
when I
Just
say
start.
what's a small step to people, it's funny because people are like, my next step is to have this show. Where, oh, okay, that's a next step, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that go into that. But a
Right.
small step for me
Right.
is three things. It's something that that you can do. It's something that is completely within your control. Like, you're not, I want someone else to give me this thing, or I want to get whatever.
Right.
And this part I really love is that it takes 20 minutes or less.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the small steps, you just start things, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, usually if you sit down and you start working and you say, it'll take me 20 minutes or less, frequently you'll find yourself working for many hours, even if you just start with that thought of, I'm just gonna sit down here
Yeah.
and
Well, you got
yeah.
me into, in 2016, I remember,
Mhm.
I sent you a painting and you gave me some feedback on sort of
Yeah.
developing my ability in rendering and drawing faces. And,
Yeah.
and I,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I did. Is I sat down at the coffee shop on the way home, and
Yeah.
I sat for 20 minutes, but sometimes that 20 minutes was
Right.
2 hours,
Right. Right. Right.
and
You
it's
you
just
just
how,
give yourself small bites.
yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes I didn't even know. I just sat down and had a pencil and just
Right.
started putting
Right.
marks on the paper. And I think that it's just so important to do that, especially when we're feeling so stuck, just to do something. It isn't necessarily, if you're not a painter, it could be, it could be writing a haiku, it could be, dancing in your
Right.
living room, like whatever that is for you.
Whatever, whatever it is, whatever the practice is that you engage with. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the clock and we got to close things down here.
Hmm.
I always love talking to you, which I've had the good fortune of doing for many years. But if other folks are interested in finding you, your work,
Hmm.
or we've talked about Smart School, which is an
Yeah.
amazing art program which people can
Yeah.
take online. I'm going to
It
post
is
all these
great.
links in the show notes for
Thank
anybody who's
you.
watching. But where
Yeah.
can people
Yeah.
go to find you? Where would you like people to go find you?
The place that two platforms that I'm most active is Instagram and Facebook. So my Instagram, I usually will repost the elsewheres that I can be found on. I'm, giving Blue Sky a try. I like Blue Sky. It's got a good vibe. But Instagram is probably the most pertinent one. Yeah.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
post that link
Yeah.
in the notes. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today, and your thoughts on living a creative life and how change
Oh,
can
yeah.
happen quick and slow.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. It's always great to see you and talk with you.
Was I right? I love how thoughtful Rebecca is and how she's really thinks through all of these creative lessons in a very, very deep way. If you are interested in going through some of your creative lessons in a deep way, we are having an open house for our Unleash Creativity Club. We're having one on December 17th and another one in January 2025. You can find out about when these are by joining our mailing list. So hit that link, join us. It's free. We also send out tools and other things on the mailing list, so it should be valuable regardless of whether or not you decide to come to the open house. It's free, and I'll see you there.